All right, before I start, I just want to say thanks to Steve for having me. Appreciate it, and thanks for you guys for showing up. I think this is a pretty cool meetup. It's my first time here, but it seems like the turnout's really great, and it seems like a lot of really interesting people here. I am going to talk about getting the most out of your content analytics. I realize that probably a fair amount of you here are developers, and that's great. We have a WordPress plugin that you can use and download as well. But I want to talk more about whether it be for yourself or for your customers that you're working with, helping them make sure that they're getting a really good understanding of what their audience is engaging with on their website, and what it and how to use that data in the most effective way possible. So that could also work for your plugins if you have a plugin site and you're looking to understand who's using your product and things like that. We'll talk about metrics that you should be focused on as well. So a little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Kaya. We're an analytics company, as I mentioned, and for digital media companies and content creators. Our whole purpose is really to help simplify analytics, to help content creators and digital media companies be able to focus more on creating great content that you guys enjoy and less time having to stare at numbers. So that's what Kaya is all about. Before Kaya, I ran the site. I still run it to this day. It's called Best Techie Tech Publication. Started when I was 13 years old. That was back in 2003. And I convinced my parents to let me use their credit card to sign up with GoDaddy for a domain and some web hosting. And the rest is history, as they say. Best Techie is actually the reason I decided to build Kaya. It's my love for analytics. I tried to spend time in a New York City analytics firm for a while, and then went back to my tech publication. It's those two things that kind of led me to ultimately build Kaya. So the main thing that drives me when it comes to analytics is that we're facing a really, really difficult problem. And a lot of you guys are developing plugins for whether it be media companies or people who have sites online or using WordPress in one way or another. And the problem is there's really no way or no consensus amongst majority of these online content creators in terms of a definition for audience engagement. That's a real problem. What does that actually mean? We're going to get into, and how can we define audience engagement is also what we're going to talk about today. So, if you're old like me, you probably remember the 90s. Everyone had those hit counters on their website. If you had a website, anyone here have a hit counter on it? So me too. So in the 90s we had these hits, right? But now we have page views. So essentially they're the same thing, right? Page view is essentially a hit, unless you're talking about a unique page view, in which in that case it's someone who went to the page and then that doesn't count them twice essentially. The problem with the page view, and why I say we need to kill the page view, at least to a certain extent, is that it's a vanity metric, not a clarity metric. And we'll talk about what the difference between those is in just a second. But it's very, very important to understand when you're looking at analytics that you look for clarity metrics, not vanity metrics. Yes, page views can be useful in certain situations. Usually promotional things like, hey, we reach half the United States. We do 150 million page views, a week or a quarter, or a month. I mean, it's nice to boast, but it doesn't actually help you understand exactly what's going on a particular website. So we're going to talk about vanity versus clarity right now. So vanity metrics, as I mentioned, they're at the very baseline of them. They're surface level metrics. They're numbers that tell you things that make you feel good. But they oftentimes lack the context and the meaning that'll help you create actionable insights to act on them, to be able to execute a plan, a strategy with them. So they're great for a couple things as I list here: initiating partnerships, promotional purposes, using them to say that you have a far reach, to expand your following. But if you're actually looking to understand your audience in new ways, you gotta move past those. You gotta move into what's called clarity metrics. And clarity metrics are also operational metrics. So, for example, on Kaya, we have a metric that we've derived called engaged readers. Engaged readers are readers that we've determined on your website who have read or viewed a piece of content in its entirety. So, and the way we do that, then just again another minute or two, but in short, the way we do that is we look at more than one metric. The page view is great for, again, promotional purposes, explaining how big you are and things like that, but it doesn't actually explain what your audience is most engaged with. So we use 3 core metrics to determine an engaged reader. It also, page views don't answer the question of what types of content are working best for you. So if you publish content regularly and you write really long posts, just because it got 500 page views, 10,000 page views, 50,000 page views, what does that actually mean? Did people go to this article and then just leave? Did they actually engage with it? Did they actually read the entire thing? Did they read most of it? Do they even care? What are they doing to signify that there's some kind of level of engagement there, that you should be actually focused on creating more content like this? Or, on the other hand, did you create a 300-word piece and it was really fun and engaging, and that's where you should be spending your time. That's the type of analytics that we're building with Kaya, so we help you answer those types of questions. The point is, clarity metrics let you figure out growth strategies. Those are the metrics you want to use to build, to use as stepping stones and build on top of. So, where do you start with clarity metrics? As I mentioned, our engaged reader number uses these 3 metrics: time spent, page scroll depth, and CTR, or click-through rate. Now, the reason we use these 3 metrics and we combine them into this, we split them out separately for you as well, but the reason why I believe these are the 3 kind of starting metrics of the future for measuring engagement are as follows. 1, you have to know how long someone spends on the page, right? That's clear. And many analytics do tell you that. Page scroll depth, how far down the page did they go, and how long on the page were they? So were they on for 33 seconds and scrolled the entire length of the page? Or were they on for 30 seconds to a minute and scrolled the entire length of the page? There's a difference between those. And again, the last one, CTR, click-through rate. This is something that we're really also interested in figuring out. All right, so someone spent, let's say, a minute and a half on the page. They scrolled 80% of the way down the article, and then let's say they got to some recommended article content at the bottom. They clicked through to one of those recommended pieces. That's a highly engaged reader. Not only did you get them to read your piece of content, you got them to click to another page on your site, generating additional traffic and most likely additional revenue for yourself. So we take these 3 things, these 3 metrics, and we combine them into a 90-10 calculation where what we're looking at is the first 2 account for about 90% of our score here. The remaining 10% come from that CTR metric. And we look at that and we say, all right, if someone is spending enough time on the page and they're scrolling enough of the page, those are high indicators. And the threshold, by the way, that we're looking at for this is they have to reach at least 50% to be considered an engaged reader. Somehow, between those 3, they have to reach 50%. We're always exploring ways to kind of enhance the algorithm to whether it should be less than 50% or more or whatever. But those are the key 3 metrics that we look at. So why these and why not page views? I kind of alluded to this a little at the beginning of so far the presentation, but the reason is there should no longer be one universal metric when it comes to understanding or trying to understand what's going on a website. Page views were and have become that universal metric, and for one very good reason. That reason is because a page view is a page view on Google Analytics, on Kaya, on Parsley, on Sharkbeat, on any other analytics platform there is. It's easy to measure, it's essentially a standard. So if you have a page view on Google Analytics, you're also going to have one page view on Kaya. That's fine. But again, we're moving past simply counting page views. Because page views, again, they don't tell you the actual meaning behind a visitor's visit. They don't tell you whether that person actually was interested in the content or whether or not you should be creating more content. And they also don't tell you a big picture kind of look at, for example, which we'll get to in just a few minutes, where they don't tell you essentially this. Let's say you have 5 authors on your site, right? Five contributing writers, 5, whatever the case may be. Who's creating the most engaging content? Is it and it's certainly not shouldn't be done by page views. It should be done by either engagement. We have something called engagement score or engaged readers, or a combination of those with those metrics. So again, it's important that when you specify the metrics that make up engagement, it's important to understand that these metrics will vary site to site. I understand that. I'm sure you guys understand that. Everyone has different ideas in terms of the goals they're looking to achieve. So when you take that into account, it's important that an analytics product be flexible for that. And it's important that you determine what metrics are most important to you. So again, for me, I think time, scroll, and TTR are a great place, at the very least, to start. And then you can add more or remove some based on the interaction you're looking for and measuring on your site. So, how do you choose which metrics are right? So, and I mean past just determining time spent, scroll, and CTR. How do you actually choose what are the best metrics for you? So it comes down to this. So first of all, I'm going to throw this out. I know I've said this 5 times already, but clarity, not vanity. Okay? You're not going to be looking for page views in terms of choosing the right metrics. I mean, it could be a part of your decision, but it certainly isn't the entire one. So, when I do a longer presentation of this, I have many examples that come on after this. Unfortunately, for time constraints, I took those out. But I'm happy to answer any questions at the end about ways you can do this within different analytics platforms and tools. So, let's say you want to increase the number of engaged readers on your site. There's certain things you should look for. Or, let's say you want to figure out whether short form or long form content works best. Or, maybe you want to increase the number of visitors who don't bounce. All very good goals. All require different understanding of what your audience is doing on your site in order to be able to execute a content strategy that works to reach these goals. So, once you identify the goals you're looking to achieve, you have to identify what it looks like if you actually achieve them. Because without that, then what are you working towards? So, for example, if you wanted to identify the metrics that allow you to determine if you reached your goals, such as decreasing the bounce rate, what does that look like? Does that mean you have more engaged readers? Does that mean you have higher time on page and perhaps higher CTR? So these are things you have to think about when looking through analytics and looking through data. And we're going to do an exercise at the end where we talk about taking things we know and then applying that to real-world things you can do to achieve those goals. So, the other thing I want to talk about that's really important, I think, is this move towards automated insights. So, automated insights are super interesting to me. Something we're working on heavily at Kaya, but also other tools are doing them as well, such as Google Analytics, have these automated insights. And I like them, and I think that they're beneficial because they simplify analytics, they make them more accessible to people, especially if they're written in a way that is in plain English. I think oftentimes when we're dealing, as developers, I'm sure you can agree, when you're trying to explain something to someone who's maybe not as tech savvy or whatever, is just not as, in a different field of work than you, it can be difficult. Same can be said with data. So people who are creating content aren't data scientists. They shouldn't be expected necessarily to understand how to look at data and act on it. So if we can create these plain English insights that are super honed in on specific piece of information, something that they can then act on. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples real quick. So here are some examples that we have in Kaya. Here are what we call smart insights. We just rolled this out a little bit ago. And what smart insights are, they're basically big picture insights. Crunching, we're doing hundreds of different calculations on data sets and for each site that's running our product. And what we're able to do is then pull out these big picture insights that are super helpful. So did you know that over the past month, page views are highest when the category is gadgets? I didn't until I saw that. This is information that's available within every analytics platform for the most part, but they're not surfacing it up. So thinking about ways you can surface up this type of information is super helpful. Or that your click-through rate is actually highest when you post 5 times per day. Well, if I look at that and I'm thinking, maybe we should be striving to post 5 articles a day in order to help increase our click-through rate. Also, that means if we're increasing our click-through rate, we're generating more page views. Yay! And one of those other really cool ones, and there's literally hundreds of calculations that we do like this, and they always refresh. Did you know over the last 30 days your engaged readers are highest in the tag apps? So this, not only are we looking at just categories. By the way, this category pulled directly from WordPress. It'll work on any site, but we originally started working with WordPress, and so when you see category, it's like a WordPress category. This is not something that was created by the end user. This is actually pulled directly from that person's site. So same with the tag. So there's literally no work involved when it comes to pulling these insights for people. What we're trying to do is simplify, again, the process involved with that. In terms of Google, they're doing similar things. They're looking at various different metrics that you can see here in terms of the one I really like is this one. Returning visitors perform above average. So I look at that and I say, if I want to really increase the retention on my site, first of all, I need to figure out a way to increase the retention on my site, right? Second of all, if I do that, that's really good news for me. As someone who wants to create, again, more engagement, more page views, what have you, that's a good insight to have. So it's not just that people, and if you think about it, it kind of makes sense too, right? If people are coming back to your site, then the likelihood, in all likelihood, that they like it, right? They're gonna come back and probably visit a couple pages. So these are things that are important to understand. And really taking time to dive into the analytics and the data that you have available to you. I think one of the major issues with analytics these days is that people have access to all this treasure trove of information, but they don't act on it, or they don't take enough advantage of the data that's being provided. They kind of look at it and are like, oh, that's interesting. Now what do I do? And that shouldn't, we're trying to fix that. Yeah, that shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't be like, oh, I didn't know that. All right, I'm gonna go write a post about something completely different than whatever was just told to me. So yeah. So also with Google Analytics, something I really like, and this can't be stressed enough. Google Analytics is super powerful. It's free for most sites unless you have like 10 million hits a month or something. Then it gets a little pricey and a little ridiculous. I think it's like $12,000 at that point per month. But anyway, if you don't have that many hits, So don't be afraid to use it to create custom reports. This is one of the probably the most underutilized features in Google Analytics by general users. They're not creating custom reports. There are so many things you can do to manipulate data using custom reports. As I mentioned in the longer presentation I have, I give examples, but unfortunately with the time constraints, I'm not able to show those. But definitely if you have time, dive into Google Analytics, look at custom reports. You can do a whole lot of really cool things with them. So, almost in conclusion, it's really important that, you know, as someone who's either working with publishers or content creators, or you yourself are one, that you understand that data is not the devil. There are a lot of people who have been in the media business for a long time who have this old school notion of data is the devil, and that I'm going to write it because I think it's newsworthy, not because people are going to like it. And that's fine, but it should also be taken. It should absolutely be taken into account that if you're seeing some kind of information come in, these insights, it should certainly shape your strategy in some way, shape, or form. There's absolutely no reason that your content strategy should be literally throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Not anymore, at least. There's enough information out there that you can really understand what's going on. So use data, develop content strategy, super important around those key insights. And this last bullet right here on this slide, that I really like a lot. Continue to experiment and use your gut. I couldn't stress this one enough. And this can be, you know, applied across pretty much anything, but always be willing to experiment and always go with your gut. And really, you know, the data may say one thing. If you disagree with it for some reason, you have this feeling, test it. Don't be afraid to. And I think that's super important. So, imagine that we had a lot of information and screenshots and pictures of dashboards and stuff like that, and we knew all this information. Let's go through this real quick. We're almost there. So, what we know. Reviews, how-tos, informative content are the biggest drivers of engaged readers. Focus more on content about gadgets and apps. In order to optimize for CTR, we should be publishing 5 pieces of content per day. Our returning visitors spend significantly more time with our content. And shorter form content drives more page views. So shorter form meaning 200 to 400 words. How do we act on that? So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about using data to create actionable intel that you can actually go out and try and create a strategy around to achieve the goals you're looking to achieve. So here's what I would do, or at least I would start with this. So first things first, increase efforts to create content relating to reviews, how-tos, and other informative pieces. That makes sense, right? But if you think about it, we also saw that gadgets and apps were the 2 biggest drivers, both tag-wise for engaged readers and traffic, and category-wise. So not only would I just create more content that follows this kind of theme, because I identified this as a trend, I would also then, on top of that, focus and hone in on specific types of content. So I would also revisit older content that performed well and see if it can be updated in some way. This is something that, from an SEO perspective, I saw an article about it today, actually, as well. But basically, updating older content, making it more useful, more updated, more relevant again, can prove very useful, especially if that content did well in the past. So the other thing, as I mentioned, publish 5 pieces of content today. If you're just a single person running a site because you're interested in it's a passion project, this may not be possible at this point, right? I understand that. But if you can't, you can always devise some kind of plan to try and get to that point. You may not get there, but if you have some plan, something to work towards, whether that be bring on another contributor or accept outside pieces, something that will allow you to increase the number of pieces of content published on your site daily. And of course, you have to continue to focus on increasing retention. So I cannot stress this point, this bullet right here enough. If you run a site, you gotta start a newsletter. It is the biggest driver of traffic for a majority of media companies. The New York Times has 50 email newsletters, I believe, and 13 million subscribers, and they use them to drive traffic to their site all day, every day. It is imperative if you want retention on a site that you have a newsletter. And lastly for this slide, remember, this is your sweet spot, 200 to 400 words. If that's what the data is telling you, that's what it is. But again, experiment. Try a long form piece here and there. See how it's received. See whether you're able to drive enough traffic and engaged readers to that piece. And again, the data is fluid. It'll update in real time. So you can always see if something new is working or not. That's the beauty about real-time analytics. You can always tell when something's working right away. And I'd like to leave you with this. It's one of my favorite pictures. And I think it speaks for itself. Context. Remember, a single statistic doesn't tell the whole story. And I think that's what I was getting at before when I said that page views are nice, kind of to inflate your ego and things like that, but they don't really tell you the full story about what's going on a piece of content. So look at various data metrics, and I think you'll be in a better place. Thanks.
Can I ask a question after you're
Sure.
running out? So before you brought up a scenario, a use case where you've got 5 different authors, editors, contributors to a single page piece of content, right? And we were talking about the engaged time with scroll depth plus time on site plus CTR. Does your tool give me a way to do that attribution beyond saying like, hey, where this person who's reading is 3/4 of the way down the page, I can attribute that to the photo editor who has a credit on this page versus the whatever top editor or the author of the post.
So like if they got 3/4 of the way down the page and then because there was a photo?
Right, and then hung out there.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that's not something we do currently. That's an interesting idea. Something I think could be kind of tough to implement if you think about it, because they could have just randomly stopped at that point of the page too.
They could have.
We would have to look at it, from a kind of an additional time spent kind of metric, right? Whereas there's the original one, how long they spent on the page overall, and then if they spend additional time at this particular section. Yeah, that's certainly something that we can explore. That's an interesting idea. We don't do it currently though.
Sure. So I'll simplify it even more so. Do you do author attribution? You talked about how you're pulling out tags and categories directly, and I don't have to do markup on that. Do you have a piece of content that has one single author? Easier case.
Yeah.
Do you know?
So this is a live view of the dashboard in a WordPress site, by the way. So we do have an author leaderboard. And let me give you an example real quick. So here's an author. I think this is what you're talking about. So basically, every author, this is all time, but you can narrow it down between any of these presets, right? And what we do is you can either dive into a specific author, or you can filter by, let's say, what author has the most engaged readers all time, for example. Or we also do something that's really cool, average page views per author. So if you are a page view oriented person or site, and you want to see how your authors are doing driving people to your site, on average, you can do that with Kaya as well, which is pretty nice. But the last thing I guess I can show you with regard to the authors, if you actually click on one, we'll bring you an author profile. So we'll show you how many posts that person has in total on your site, how many engaged readers they've brought, the total number of page views they've generated. We have something called recommended views, which is a widget we have, super smart recommendations based on your audience's engagement already on your site. So we're able to recommend articles, not just because they're reading about the iPhone, we're going to show them 5 more iPhone articles, right? That's not what we do. We show them because they've read about other things as well, try to make some kind of guess based on freshness of the content, things like that, what they might be interested in. Average CTR, average page views, and then you can go through and actually kind of see each and every article that this person published. This is me. And you can see the engagement score for each article, how many engaged readers it has. So like this is something I recently reviewed, this OWC doc that came out. And so you can see the engaged readers over time, over the past 7 days. You can see all the, one of the things that we're really big on is showing all the kind of insights that you would want in one place. So you don't have to click around a million pages in a dashboard to find it. And we also break everything up by desktop and mobile, which is super helpful. And we also show you the UTMs. So if you use UTMs, a lot of people do, especially when they're tracking where people are coming from on social and other places. We can show you that 2 people came from my RSS feed, for example. And as I also mentioned, CTR. So since we do track who's clicking to another page on your site, we have this section called Top Click To URLs. And it tells you from this article, 21 people went back to my homepage, 2 people went to this gadget section, 2 to reviews, and so on, which is nice and easy and great to be able to keep track of. Yes?
When you revisit or repurpose old content, based on your experience, is it better to copy it over, do a new post that's updated with a new URL, use the same URL, update the old URL?
Good question.
If I have a post that's 2 years old, it does well, I want to update it. Am I really using a URL from 2015?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The way so far that I've experimented with it on my site is I've taken the meat of the post and I've started a new post. And what I've done then is I've updated it with new information that may have come out about software or the hardware or whatever the case may be. So like we have a post on my site that was written a long time. It was a review for like some iTunes conversion software that lets you take movies and turn them from from DRM written things to non-DRM things. And it was like ranked #1 at Google. It did really well, and I noticed that the traffic was kind of going down. So I was like, let me try and repurpose this. And both posts now do really well.
Do you link to that from the?
Yeah. So I do. So definitely always link back to the existing content. And obviously, as the case is, when you're creating any type of new content, even if it's not a kind of rehashed post, you should always, if you can mention that you've written about something in the past, always link to it. I've seen, always linking to if you have specific tags that you use or categories that you really write a lot in. It's always good to link to those. Helps boost SEO for that. Yeah.
A couple of questions. Would you demonstrate how you set this up?
Sure. I can do that.
Also, how do you charge for this?
So I'm gonna do the setup first, then I'll get to the charge.
This one that you just showed us, how long did it take you to set that up?
Everything's automatic. We pull all that stuff automatically.
Automatic. So set up.
So the only thing that's set up is if you have WordPress, you can download our plugin. It's in the WordPress repository. Then you just insert the public and private key into the settings, which you can find here. You get them there. And in the setup, when you're signing up, we ask for a username, password, and site URL. And then it'll provide you with the download link or the snippet of code you put in the JavaScript. If you run WordPress, which I'm sure most of you here do, then you're going to want to use our plugin. It works obviously best for WordPress-based sites, but if you're using the plugin, it makes it easier. We're able to pull more things. And then in terms of,
then you go to settings. There's a thing that shows up the settings for you.
yeah, it'll notify you once you activate the plugin that you have to enter in our private and public keys. They're obviously different for every site. And then you save it, and then it automatically, just like that, we're starting to collect data for you.
And where does that data reside?
On our end, it's your data though.
And
Yeah.
Capture that data?
What do you mean by capture?
Once you go out of business or whatever, what happens?
Oh, so can you export it? We don't have an export feature right now, but it's something that we can, if we were to do that, we can make it exportable, yes. We have an API that we're in the midst of kind of updating to. So you can, at this point, I believe you probably could take anything that you see in the dashboard and kind of relay it into anything via the API.
How do you charge for this?
So in terms of charging, we have it's 30-day free trial, no credit card required, and then we charge $20 a month base fee for up to 250,000 page views, and then after that it's about $0.00002 per page view, which equates to about $170 a month for 1 million page views.
And how many customers you have?
So right now we're working with a couple hundred customers at the moment, and if you're interested in using the product, we're happy to extend free trials to people who are here, additional free trials if you want some additional time too. Yeah, I think you were first in the year.
What strides are you taking to integrate social engagement such as comments, likes, and shares, along with all the WordPress?
So that's a great question. So we get a lot. So right now what we have is we track Facebook shares, and as you can see, so here's the aggregate number over the past 24 hours. And if you actually change this, so let's say 7 days. By the way, all the numbers in parentheses are compared to the previous time period. So this is the past 7 days versus the previous 7 days. So we have it in aggregate here. We also have it in each article gets is accounted for as well. So down at the bottom we see this one has 916 Facebook shares. This is nice because we tie directly to Facebook and use their API, and they make it very easily accessible for us to provide this information to you. Unfortunately, Twitter has cut back on a lot of their API access, unless you pay absurd amount of money for like GNIP or whatever, which I think they own most of. So we would like to offer more Twitter insights, but it's not something we can do right now. The one we're looking at is LinkedIn. I think they have a little bit of a better API at least than Twitter does, for pulling kind of shares on LinkedIn. Comments is tough. We actually at one point had a comment system based on Facebook comments, and we were able to count comments, but we kind of deprecated that. Just wasn't getting enough use.
And one more thing, and the type of content you create, does it only have to be a blog with text content, or can you do tracking like images and video and maybe even other things?
Yeah, so yes, the answer is yeah. We don't have extensive video tracking at this point in terms of like
How will the person watch the video?
Yeah, but as long as you're on the page, we can give you some kind of idea at this point. We are interested in expanding kind of into the video market. So that's definitely something that's on our radar.
Is this a clickable page?
Yeah, so this is just via the dashboard via WordPress, but we have a separate site that you can go to and print it. I mean, if you wanted to print it from here, you could too.
So if I wanted to make a report and show to somebody who's sponsoring the site what's going on, that's easy to do.
Yeah, you could do print, right? And then you can even save it as a PDF.
Is that your print module or whatever?
No,
This
it's
is-
basic browser.
Oh, this is just from Chrome, the browser. And then I think you're the last question.
Yes.
So most of what you're focused on is sharing content, blog posts, that kind of thing. Do you also, are you able to count, if it's a web app, button clicks, things like that?
Yeah, so no, not right now. Is the short answer. But we're mostly focused on content creation and all realms of that, more so than web apps at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.